Hey everybody, welcome to Grimm's Forge Gaming. Today we're going to do a quick update of my StamDK Ghost of Sparta. And this is my Kratos build, and we are running a very easy to put together dot build right now. And so let's jump right into it and show you what we've been running. First thing to note, we are running Malekith's Band of Brutality. It's pretty important when you're running a dot-based build. I think right now Malekith's Band has dot-based builds performing very well. And one of the most important reasons for that is for PvP's purposes. When you put dots on people and you're kind of waiting for them to die, just basic dots usually won't have enough pressure to finish people off, right? So you're going to need to follow up with other forms of damage to finish them off. However, when you're using Malekith's Band of Brutality, as long as they don't cleanse those dots, every dot that hits is hitting 25% harder, and the amount of pressure that brings is pretty impressive. So Malekith's Band of Brutality, you can see that this is infused, and we are running the weapon damage enchant on it. And it says increase your damage done by 25%. You cannot deal critical damage. And whenever you run a mythic item, most of the time it'll break up your monster set unless you're running a front bar back bar setup, which we are not for this build. And so the one piece monster set that we currently have right now is just Molokina, and you can see that's in a heavy setup for us, so that way I'm pretty sure, let me look and see here. Yeah, it looks like we are running a 2 heavy 5 medium, and you saw some of the other sets there, but this Molokina one piece monster set, we're currently running heavy. You could run whatever monster piece, one piece that you want. So if you need more max stam, more max health might be good for this. So maybe Armor of the Trainee would be a great thing right here. You don't need that extra 124 weapon damage, and I might actually look into that because this is one of the lowest max health PvP builds that I've run, and so Armor of the Trainee might be perfect here. And as a matter of fact, I probably talked myself into it. So anyways, one piece something or other right here. It could be a monster piece or it could be Armor of the Trainee. And then next set that we are running is Shackle Breaker. Works out so well on a Stamina or Magicka DK because DKs need both Magicka and Stamina, ample resources, max resources for it, because a lot of your abilities, even when you're a Stamina DK, a lot of your abilities require Magicka. So Shackle Breaker has been working out very well. We are running Impen on everything that we can afford to run Impen on, and then this piece right here you saw was still reinforced, but Impen on everything if you can. And then the next armor set that we are running is Deadly, and the Deadly Strike set, you can see the 2-piece gives you weapon damage, 3 pieces crit, which we lose the crit because of Malekith's Band, 4 pieces weapon damage, that's great, and then the 5-piece increase the damage your physical, bleed, poison, disease, damage over time, and channeled abilities do by 20%. It's important to know when I put the build together on the ESO build editor, my tooltips for all of my abilities were higher on there than they are in game, and I brought this up on another build, my other Kratos, my Stamden Kratos, that we were running Malekith's Band on that, and the tooltips were higher on it on the ESO builder. And so then we went out and we just hit a mob to see what our D-swing was doing, and sure enough, our D-swing was doing what the ESO builder said that it should be. So currently, Malekith's Band, that extra 25% is not being calculated into the tooltips, and so you'll currently take your tooltips and then add 25%, and that will give you your true value of what you should be doing against an NPC, and then cut that value in half, and that'll tell you what you should be doing against player characters. So anyways, Deadly Strikes gives us that additional dot damage pressure, and that's great. And you can see that we just have Robust on both of these. We need the additional Stamina. If you wanted to make these infused, by all means make them infused, push more weapon damage. You could probably easily push 5k weapon damage on this build. I can tell you though, a 4k weapon damage to 5k weapon damage on a dot based build with Malekith is going to be a lot of pressure. So you don't necessarily need to break the build or break your back trying to get to 5k weapon damage on this build. It's still going to hit very hard. And we're running mauls, or one-handed maces, and you can see that we're Nirnhoned on our main hand, and we have a shock damage glyph. The reason we have the shock damage glyph is we are hoping to apply shock damage, which will apply concussed, and concussed gives minor vulnerability to the target. So they're going to receive 8% more damage if that procs. And then we're hoping that the frost damage glyph on my offhand, which is sharpened, we're hoping that the frost will apply chilled. And if it does apply chilled, then they are going to be doing 15% less damage, and so that's great. So they're receiving 8% more damage, doing 15% less damage, and that's perfect. Also, you want to go sharpened on your offhand for your main damage bar. You don't want to run Nirnhoned. If you do the math of it, it ends up making way more sense to be sharpened in the offhand. And so that is the setup: Shackle Breaker and Deadly with Malakath's Band, and then this piece could be whatever you want. I'm probably going to switch this out to Armor of the Trainee for more health. I don't need that additional weapon damage. We're doing just fine with our pressure. Let's jump into the abilities. We'll look at those. Looks like I got 10 minutes left on my food. This is going to work out great. You see, we got 1971 stamina recovery. That's great. 4,300 weapon damage. Don't worry about our crit. 3,000, 30,000 spell resistance, and then 26,000, 27,000 physical resistance. And then we've got 2,800 crit resistance. That's great as well. Like I said, our max magicka is pretty important at 14,000. This will get the job done. I do run into some magicka issues when I'm having to reapply buffs or get cauterized back up and going. So I wouldn't go below 14,000 with my max magicka on this build. Max health, I would not go below 24,000, almost 26,000 or 25,000. Sorry, 25,000 for me in PvP is pretty much the threshold that I just don't want to go any lower than that. So that Armor of the Trainee on the helm piece will add some additional health to the build, another 1,400. So that'll be good. And then 29,000, 30,000 max stam. That's great right now. And if you look at our physical penetration when I buff up here, you can see that we've got 11,000 penetration. That's because we're running the mauls and those dual wield maces or mauls or whatever. That does a lot of penetration. And then we've got Malakath's Band. So this build really cuts into people pretty hard. So that's great. Let's look at the tooltips here. Oh, one more thing too while we are there. You can see right now we're running the Serpent for additional stamina recovery. It got a buff, so 310 additional stamina recovery. If you want to run less stamina recovery than 1900, that's what it was with a tripod, you can run the Warrior and pick up another 200, 300 weapon damage. You know, like I said, getting 5k weapon damage on this build, it really isn't a problem. You just need to find that sweet spot that you can balance the weapon damage with the sustain. And you can see that we're using Artaeum Takeaway Broth, and it gives us max health, max health recovery, max stam, and stamina recovery, pretty much everything we need. I would say if magicka is a real problem, you could pick up another food that will get you some magicka recovery in the tank as well. So, but anyways, that's what we're looking at, and you can see that we are a Nord, and the Nord's going to give us the additional resistances. On our back bar, we're running defending on our back bar, so when we look at our resistances there, we're just under cap with our spell resistance at 33,000. That's great. Actually, next patch we'll hit cap with that because major and minor resolve are going up, and then our physical resistance is at 30,000. So for a medium armor build, pretty respectable resistances. We feel pretty beefy, and that's good. Let's look at our tooltips here. Jump into the CP. Right. My primary spammable that I'm currently using on this build is Whirling Blades, and this is also an execute, so as the targets get lower, this is going to start doing more damage to them. So the 8K tooltip on it, like a D-Swing, could have a 13K tooltip. So D-Swing, yes, does hit harder as a primary spammable. However, the way we're using this is we're going to get Noxious Breath on the target, and Noxious Breath is going to apply that upfront 7,700 damage and then another 15,000 damage over time. And another thing too is, like we said, the tooltips don't account for the 25% additional, so it would be 15,743 plus 25%. That's actually what the dot damage for Noxious Breath is going to be doing. You can see we got a 20,000 tooltip on our Venomous Claw for the damage over time. Add another 25% on top of that, so it ends up being about 25,000 damage over time. And you can also see the poison seeps into the target and deals increased damage the longer it lasts, dealing 20% more damage every 2 seconds. And I can tell you, if they don't cleanse this right here, it will eat their face. So Malakath's band with these two items, these two abilities, is pretty brutal. And we're running Fossilize. It's probably the best CC in the game. It gives you both a hard CC and a soft CC. So it's going to stun them, and then when they break free the stun, they're still immobilized, and then they got to break free of the immobilization. And so pretty much every 6 seconds, hit them with the Fossilize, and it'll apply both those. And this ability will make it a resource fight. We are running Quick Cloak, and Quick Cloak's going to be our form of major expedition. It's also going to pulse and do like a damage pulse damage effect around us. That's great. And it also gives us major evasion. And major evasion reduces the damage from area attacks by 25%. And I believe that's going down to 20% next patch. So a 5% nerf or 5% increase in area of effect damage. I'm probably still going to run this ability just for the fact that this is the only form of major expedition on this build, because we're running dual wield for the Ghost of Sparta theme. So playing around with a couple different things here. Rend was the ability. Let me buff up here real quick. I'm pretty sure that it gets to a 66k tooltip, and if you were to look at it, take 66k and add 25% onto that, that's what its true value is going to be with Malakath's band. But yeah, 66,708 physical damage over 16 seconds, healing you for 50% of the damage done. The dot on this on NPCs is roughly about 9k a second. It's a lot of pressure, and the heals coming in are pretty nice too. And I can tell you that if I put this and these two dots on somebody and they don't have a way to cleanse it, they're going to die from just the dots by themselves. It's just way too much pressure, just these three abilities alone. And so been playing around with Rend, and if I weren't going to run Rend, I'd either run Dawnbreaker of Smiting or Take Flight. So, you know, how many DKs out there actually do not run a leap? That's kind of an odd thing, right? So, and then on our back bar, you can see that we're running Molten Armaments. And the nice thing about this is our form of major brutality for the build. It also, your own damage with heavy attacks is increased by 50%. And so when I'm channeling a heavy attack and then using Whirling Blades, heavy attack, Whirling Blade, heavy attack, Whirling Blade, heavy attack, Whirling Blade, those heavy attacks are actually doing a respectable amount of damage as well. And so, of course, I go to that the rotation that we just talked after I've applied my dots. Once we get the dots on them, then it's just heavy attack, Whirling Blades, heavy attack, Whirling Blades, maintain your buffs, heavy attack, Whirling Blades, let's dot them up again. And it's a fairly simple rotation. That's why I like it, and still an immense amount of pressure. We've got Fragment and Shield on the build, and mostly for the bottom part there it says also gain major and major mending, increasing your healing done by 25%. And that's pretty important. Also, there's a passive when our hardened armor is active. We get an extra 12% healing received or healing done. And so we got 12% additional healing there, 25% additional healing there. So an extra, what, 37% healing? That's not too shabby. So let's buff up here again. I'm gonna look at something. Tooltip is going to be 16,710, and I think that's without minor mending or major mending on. It probably just ran out because it's a very short window. But anyways, this will get up to 20k tooltip on our vigor, and that's nice. And then we're running Cauterize, and Cauterize is a really nice heal over time as well. Just throws out a little burst heal every once in a while, and it could when it crits, it will be pretty significant. And that's something else about Malekith's band. While you can't do critical damage, you can still do critical healing, and so that's pretty nice. And so, like I said, we've got Molten Armaments for our weapon damage buff, Fragment and Shield for major mending, Resolving Vigor, Cauterize, and then our armor buff for major resolve. Major and minor resolve are both getting a buff next patch, and so our armor is going to be even better. We're running corrosive armor on our back bar. Cool thing about this is limit incoming damage to 3% of your max health, so that's really cool. You do an AoE poison damage around you for 12 seconds. That's really cool. While active, this ability, your direct damage dealt ignores enemy physical resistances. So I can tell you that if you fully buff up and then hit corrosive armor and do the heavy attack whirling blades rotation that we were talking about, you're just going to be doing an immense amount of damage in an AoE around you. And so that's a pretty nice play, and you've also limited the amount of damage that you can take, so you can tank out a lot of things with this. So it's a lot of pressure on this build if you haven't run Deadly Strikes before, and then just pair it with Shackle Breaker on a DK, and you'll have enough stats and everything to get the job done. Let's jump into the CP. Nothing here in the Apprentice. We've got 25 points in the Physical Weapon Expert, and if I were to bump that up more, it would make my light attack whirling blade combo hit better. The light attacks would actually hit, or heavy attacks I should say. I channel heavy attacks into whirling blade, but the heavy attacks would hit harder. But this ended up kind of just being a point dump for me. 61 points into Mastered Arms. It increases our direct damage done, and so whirling blades is going to be direct damage done, and then our Noxious Breath has some upfront damage that is considered direct damage, and so it increases that, and so that's pretty good. 61 points into Thaumaturge, and you can see that Thaumaturge increases all your damage over time effects by 21% with the 61 points, and that's good. Nothing into Precise Strikes, and Precise Strikes, you can see there, if we could still put points into it, because you can see it increases your critical healing. However, because we wanted to run 61 points into Thaumaturge and 61 points into Mastered Arms, it just kind of left us with not enough points to do much there for additional critical healing. We still get the job done. 59 points into Piercing, and that's how our dots are, that's why our penetration was so high, and our dots are really start chopping into people. 64 points into Mighty. 61 points into Ironclad, 60 points into Spell Shield, 60 points into Medium Armor Focus. This is where I differ than a lot of people on my builds. This is especially going to pay dividends going into next patch, where resolves, major and minor resolves, are going to be worth more, and so it'll be a little easier to hit armor caps going in next patch. However, if anyone hits you with Major Breach, which if you haven't seen the changes to Major Fracture, Minor Fracture being removed to the game, and how Major and Minor Breach are going to function, if you hit someone with a Major and Minor Breach next patch, it'll strip 9k resistances from them. And so I think this is going to be very important moving forward, and I already use it in that fashion. So 25 points into Crit Resistance, nothing here, and 64 points into Quick Recovery, so an additional healing received. 61 points into Warlord, 1 point in the Siphoner, so they have one extra thing to cleanse. 64 points into Mooncalf, 64 points into Arcanist, and this is very important. A lot of people say, well, I'm a stamina character, but on a StamDK you need adequate magicka recovery because a lot of your abilities are magicka based. We'll look at it real quick before we leave here. 19 points in tenacity. Like I said, my main rotation is a heavy, holding a dual wield heavy attack into whirling blades after our dots are applied to them, and so this is going to put additional stamina back in the tank. 61 points into tumbling. We are more tumbling oriented than we are shadow ward. We're not going to stand around and block. While our back bar is all block cast capable, I would much rather hit a dodge roll vigor or a vigor dodge roll and get 1 or 2 ticks in, then stand and hold block and burn through my stamina. So that is the CP, everyone. And then it looks like our food ran out, but that's fine. We'll just let that be. We were going to look at what? I guess that was it. As far as passives go, make sure you get all your class passives. Pretty important. Make sure that you get all of your weapon passives. Those are pretty important as well. And then your armor passives, as far as medium go, get all the medium and then only the top 3 of heavy. Now, if you're going to run a heavy armor dot build, heavy armor version of this, you can. You would just run deadly weapons and jewelry and make your armor shackle breaker heavy armor. And there are bonuses to doing that, like you'll get additional healing received, and you'll get more resources back from heavy attacks, as well as you'll have a higher health pool and health recovery. So by all means, if you want to run a heavy armor version going in the next patch of this build, you absolutely can. And then you can see, like I said, that we're a Nord, and the best passive for any type of tank in the game is the rugged passives, almost 4k additional spell and physical resistance. And then stalwart, we get an extra 1500 stamina, and you can see that we generate 5 ultimate whenever we take damage, and that can occur every 10 seconds, and that's pretty nice. We've got built-in ult gen for a stamina DK. And so that's build, everybody. Pretty simple. Deadly Strike Shackle Breaker with Malakath's Band, and get your dots on them and then just spin to win. So everybody be safe out there. Take care.